Manager for the County of Orange. Thank you all for joining us here tonight. First and foremost, we do have translators that are here tonight in Spanish and in Korean. If there's anybody in the audience that does need a headset, you could please come up here. And if I can have my Spanish translator come up first and translate that we have headsets available for anybody. If you can go up to the microphone up here.
Aló, si alguien necesita un aparato auditivo para escuchar la interpretación de español, puede decir aquí.
And may I have my Korean translator translate that we have headsets available up in the same location.
네, 한국어 통역이 준비되어 있으니까 필요하신 분, 통역 서비스가 필요하신 분은 여기 오셔가지고 마이크로폰 가져가시면 됩니다. 감사합니다.
Thank you. And for right now, I'd like to introduce Supervisor Katrina Foley to provide her comments for tonight. Supervisor Foley.
Thank you. Thank you all for being here tonight. Thank you for attending our 2021 Redistricting Town Hall. And this is for the Orange County 2nd District. Each district hosted a town hall regarding redistricting. So tonight, our town hall will be both in person and streaming live virtually, as well as on our website. We understand your time is valuable, and so we appreciate that you made accommodations to be here tonight. This is a very important process that Orange County is going through. And for everyone participating virtually, you'll be given instructions shortly on how to provide your input via phone tonight. So that's a really nice feature that we have. A little background as to why we're here tonight. Every 10 years, local governments are required to redraw their district lines using the most current census data to reflect how local populations have changed. So as you all might know, we did a lot of census collecting over the last year, and that data has been now made available, I think today, and we're going to be starting to drill down on that data over the next month. And this process that we're going through right now is called redistricting. It's important in ensuring that each board member represents about the same number of constituents, and constituents in this case, residents. In Orange County, the Board of Supervisors is responsible for approving the maps for our supervisorial districts. Now, this is a different process than they're going to be going through at the city level or at the state level or even the federal level. So we have our own process. Tonight's town hall will include a brief presentation on the county's 2021 redistricting process and an opportunity to ask questions, provide feedback on redistricting, including providing input on communities of interest. The real purpose of these workshops is to receive valuable input from members of the community. So thank you all for being here. When we get to the comment Q&A portion of the presentation tonight, please do feel free to voice your opinion, share your ideas and your thoughts. Again, I thank you for being in attendance tonight. I hope you stay engaged. And before we turn it over, I wanted to also just thank you all for wearing your masks. We are at this point seeing a rise in cases from the Delta variant, and it's very important. And I'm so grateful that you're all wearing your masks, and I hope that everyone will continue to get vaccinated. And so at this time, I will turn it over to Molly.
Thank you, Supervisor. And again, thank you all for joining us tonight. I wore the wrong earrings for this tonight. I want to go ahead and introduce the rest of the folks that are actually here up on the dais with me. To my left is obviously Supervisor Katrina Foley, and we really do appreciate her being here tonight. As well as Jessica Witt, who is the Director of Government and Community Relations. She's to my left. And then to the left of Supervisor Foley is Mark Servino, who's the Supervising Deputy County Counsel for the County of Orange. And then Deborah Depp, who's furthest away from me. She's at the Director of the Center for Demographic Research at Cal State Fullerton. So they're all here tonight to be able to provide a presentation for you all. So just, we obviously had our introductory remarks by Supervisor Foley, so that we'll make sure to have a PowerPoint presentation that'll come right after, which gives a redistricting overview for you all to take a look at by county staff. We do have public comments that we want to obviously hear from the people that are in the audience tonight, as well as on the phone. So we do have the ability for folks to watch on Facebook. So at facebook.com/OCGov, you can go ahead and see it live telecast at the present time. If anybody's on Facebook watching that would like to call in, you can call in and we can actually hear you in this room. That number is 844-291-4185, access code 5541122. So please call into that number, and that number is also on our Facebook account in the comments section. So please do call in if you'd like to provide comments tonight. Speakers are allotted 3 minutes if you are speaking in English. If you require translation, and again tonight we have Spanish translation and Korean translation, you will be allotted 6 minutes to provide your comments. At the event conclusion, we will go ahead, the workshop information posted on our website, and again, throughout, we'll be referencing our website, which is ocgov.com/redistricting. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to Jessica Witt.
Good evening. Good evening. So tonight we're going to begin with what is redistricting. So as has been mentioned, it is that regular process of adjusting the lines of voting districts in accordance with population shifts. For some of you, this may be your first redistricting cycle with us. For others of you, you may have been involved in 2011, 2001, or before that. But as you'll learn tonight, a lot of things have changed this time around. Different levels of government have different responsibilities for redistricting following each decennial census to meet strict requirements for population equality and voting rights protections. At the state level, the California Citizens Redistricting Commission is responsible for redrawing congressional and state legislative districts, including those for the state Senate and Assembly. Counties are responsible for redrawing the supervisorial districts, and that'll be the focus of our meeting tonight. And cities are responsible for redrawing city council districts, if applicable, if they elect their city councils by district, as not all do. Next slide. So next, we'd like to discuss why redistricting is important, specifically here within the County of Orange. The Orange County Board of Supervisors oversees many services and resources in the community that are provided on a regional level. Those include public health and social services, public safety, such as the sheriff, district attorney, or public defender, or probation, municipal services to those unincorporated areas, and contract cities. And this periodic redistricting and redrawing of the boundaries are important to rebalance district populations, as population growth is not uniform throughout the county and across districts over a 10-year period. It also ensures the Board of Supervisors reflects the county's diverse population and that it enables constituents to vote for the supervisor of their choice. You may have heard that there have been significant delays in receipt of the census redistricting data. The COVID-19 pandemic created delays and extended the data collection by the U.S. Census Bureau to October of 2020. This was 4 months later than in previous redistricting cycles. This resulted in an extended timeline for the release of data. The U.S. Census Bureau plans to release the final census redistricting data, also known as the public law data, to the states by September 30th of 2021. This is 5 months later than in previous redistricting efforts. And we are excited to announce that the public law legacy format data was actually released today on August 12th, 4 days earlier than we anticipated, so that was some good news. But that format requires additional processing, which has already begun. Then the state of California needs 30 days to adjust that legacy format data for incarcerated individuals to their last California address. So again, we expect that data to be received that we'll be able to use to begin drawing maps by the end of September. But the bottom line is that the delays impacted the redistricting timeline for everyone. We are not unique in this regard. However, the county has been making the most of this time before the data is released to provide workshops like today, to provide information on redistricting, timeline, as well as receive public comment and feedback on communities of interest. Next, we'd like to highlight the road to map approval and some of the key dates and timeline of actions that can also be found on our redistricting website at www.ocgov.com/redistricting. The timeline for the development and consideration of maps, based on the assumption that we receive the data by the end of September, is as follows. We estimate a public submission period of proposed maps based on receipt of data from the statewide database of our data by the end of September to be held between October 4th and October 15th. The county has purchased the ESRI web-based redistricting software that can be used to submit maps. It's a web-based program that can be used from any place that you may have internet access, whether that's at your home or perhaps a library or another public location. However, we do recommend that you use a desktop or a laptop computer. As you can imagine, it could be very difficult to draw maps on a smartphone screen or something like that. So it could be done, but it would be a lot easier to do it on a desktop or a laptop. Then on November 2nd, the draft maps that have been received will be presented at a public hearing at a board meeting at a time certain on November 2nd. Then on November 9th, there will be another public hearing at a Board of Supervisors meeting regarding any map revisions or possible map selection on that date. Then by November 16th, if necessary, there will be another public hearing at a board meeting to make final map selection for preparation of the redistricting ordinance. We will then begin the process of board adoption of the maps. Between November 17th and December 1st, county staff will be preparing the formal ordinance based on the map selected by the board. You'll note that this takes into account the Thanksgiving holiday. Then on December 7th, the board will consider the first reading of the redistricting ordinance and maps. Then the following Tuesday on December 14th, the board will consider the second reading of the redistricting ordinance and maps, which will allow us to have those in place prior to the December 15th statutory deadline for the Board of Supervisors to approve the redistricting ordinance and maps in advance of the June 7th, 2022 primary election. The question has come up as to, with regards to the State Redistricting Commission, as they have requested an extension of the deadline from the courts. However, if granted, it would only apply to the state, not the counties or the cities. However, the county has developed a solid timeline and calendar that meets or exceeds the requirements of Assembly Bill 849, also known as the Fair Maps Act, and that will allow us to complete our redistricting process by December 15th. And next, Mark Servino will go over the creation of maps that comply with the law.
Thanks, Jessica. So adopting maps requires a careful consideration of the requirements of federal and state law. With federal law, you have the requirement of that it has to be substantially equal in population, which is based on the constitutional requirement of equal protection. And of course, you have the Voting Rights Act of 1965. With state law, the requirements for county redistricting are found in sections 21500 through 21509 of the California Election Code. And as Jessica mentioned, these provisions were substantially revised in 2019 through the Fair Maps Act, which is also referred to as Assembly Bill 849. The current situation and laws under which we're drawing maps is very different from when we did it back in 2011. I was involved in that process. The law and process back in 2011 was pretty much unchanged from 2001. There was no pandemic, of course. The data was not delayed, and as a result, there was not a delay in the drawing of maps. Next slide. And the reason why we redistrict in the first place is to ensure that each of the 5 supervisor districts are substantially equal in population. The population of districts changes over time at different rates. So after the census, districts have to be redrawn to once again be equal in population. And by population, we're referring to county residents, not just citizens and not just voting age adults. Unlike congressional districts, local electoral districts do not require perfect equality. Some deviation is acceptable so long as it serves a valid governmental interest. So in the total deviation between districts, a total deviation of districts of less than 10% is presumptively constitutional, so long as the deviation is based, again, on a rational public policy, such as drawing districts that are compact and contiguous, keeping cities and communities of interest intact, and complying, of course, with the Voting Rights Act. AB 849 requires the county to count people in state prisons at their home address if known, and that's one of the changes from 2011. And the purpose of this is to avoid having districts with state prisons skewed through the inclusion of the state prison population. For example, the state prison in Ptolemy County would have over 7% of that county's population if you didn't have this change. Next slide. Back in 2011, the criteria for redistricting was much more open-ended. The statute, all it said was in establishing the boundaries of a district, the board may give consideration to the following factors: topography, geography, cohesiveness, contiguity, integrity, and compactness of territory, and communities of interest of the division. These criteria were discretionary, and there was no definition with respect to what this meant. AB 849, again, significantly changes this. First, the criteria that you see are mandatory. And number 2, the criteria must be applied in the listed order of priority. Number 1, it has to be geographically contiguous, so they have to touch. There has to be one whole district. 2, we have to maintain the geographic integrity of neighborhoods or local communities of interest. 3, respect the geographic integrity of city or census designated areas to minimize division. 4, make district boundaries easily identifiable and understandable by residents. And 5, the supervisor districts have to be drawn to encourage geographic compactness. So these are the 5 criteria that we have to apply in the order that we have to apply them. But in addition to providing mandatory criteria, AB 849 also has some prohibitions, and namely being that the board shall not adopt supervisor district boundaries for the purpose of favoring or discriminating against a political party. Next slide. The Board of Supervisors must also adopt a map that complies with Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act. The Act prohibits voting practices that result in a denial or abridgment of the right of any citizen of the United States to vote on account of race or color. And Congress enacted the Voting Rights Act for the broad remedial purpose of eliminating racial discrimination in voting. A violation of Section 2 is established if, based on the totality of circumstances, the challenged electoral process is not equally open to participation by members of a racial minority group, in that its members have less opportunity than other members of the electorate to participate in the political process and to elect representatives of their choice. And this is because redistricting has historically been used at times to prevent minority voters from gaining political power by drawing districts in a way that dilutes their voting power. And this vote by dilution has commonly occurred in 2 ways: packing, where the district is drawn to try to encompass all members of a minority group in just one district, or cracking, where districts are drawn in a way to dilute and split members of a minority group. And the 14th Amendment restricts the use of race as the predominant criterion in the drawing of districts to the subordination of other considerations. So you can't just ignore all of the AB 849 criteria discussed above and just draw districts purely based upon race. And that is why it is important for us to solicit and obtain the input of everyone in this room and the input of the public regarding these factors, such as the communities of interest. Next slide. Now, what is a community of interest? A community of interest is a population that shares common social or economic interests that should be included within a single supervisory district for the purpose of its effective and fair representation. The definition reflects a policy that the goal of redistricting is to give voice to communities and neighborhoods. Examples include culture, areas in which people share the same or similar living standards, use the same transportation facilities, go to the same schools or go to the same churches, have similar work opportunities, or have access to the same media. And people can belong to multiple communities of interest. And community testimony is invaluable. But we need to base the decision on the quality of the claim, not the number of people making it. That's why it's important to have folks testify who are members of the communities of interest and who have personal knowledge, and that has more weight than, let's say, a form letter that's just, that's where multiple copies of that are submitted. And again, in addition to the definition of what a community of interest is, AB 849 also tells us what it can't include, and communities of interest do not include relationships with political parties, incumbents, or political candidates. Next slide. Defining communities of interest. How can members of the public participate in this process and define communities of interest? First, of course, there's oral testimony, and everyone will have an opportunity to testify and provide their personal stories, because these are powerful in terms of providing both a personal view as well as providing historical context. So please take this opportunity to provide testimony regarding your community. Two, there's written testimony. A written description can be used to tell your community's story. So please do not hesitate to submit comments by mail or through the county's redistricting website. Oftentimes I see folks provide their personal testimony and they're reading from a letter or a statement, and feel free to submit that statement as well as a written statement. And then there's third, community issues. Often communities get involved in redistricting because they want to organize for or against a common issue. So consider participating through community-based organizations that you're a member of, and encourage other people in your community to participate. And then finally, the wonderful thing about redistricting, in addition to submitting comments and testimony, is that members of the public can also directly propose and draft maps. So, as Jessica mentioned, the county has acquired Esri software, as procured software, and that allows members of the public not only to talk about their communities, but to draw maps that keep the communities of interest that they've provided this testimony on together. And once the maps are submitted, the one thing about the the Fair Maps Act, it also requires that the board have at least 2 public hearings on proposed maps, and that's the opportunity for the public, after having drafted the maps, to go and explain why a map does a better or worse job of keeping the communities of interest that they've testified to together. So in addition to providing your testimony and drawing the maps, make sure to participate in the process and give your input as to which maps best keep together the communities of interest that you're, of course, have an interest in. And with that, Deborah Dipp, take over.
Thank you. So in order to facilitate comments on all aspects of the redistricting process for the County of Orange Board of Supervisors, a public participation kit will be created. This includes the public participation plan that was adopted by the Board of Supervisors on July 27th, and it's now posted on the county's redistricting website. There are 3 methods to provide written input. These include the idea and comment form, the online mapping software that is expected to be available from October 4th through 15th, which is after the official redistricting data set is made available and the statewide database completes their redistribution of the incarcerated persons to their last known California address, as Jessica mentioned earlier. A step-by-step walkthrough of the software will be published online after the data is available, and the walkthrough will have screenshots and step-by-step instructions for the software, and it will be available in Chinese, English, Korean, Spanish, and Vietnamese. There will also be an Excel file that will allow the user to assign districts to census tracts split by cities and census-designated places, and written comments will be accepted throughout the whole redistricting effort. After the Census Bureau releases the data and it is updated by the statewide database, the full redistricting kit and data sets will be posted online on the county's redistricting website. Next slide. Again, for written comments, you can go to the county's redistricting website and fill out the online comment form and submit comments at any time. And there's also a PDF idea form seen here on the screen that you can fill out electronically and email to the redistricting@ocgov.com email address. You can also print out the form and scan it or take a picture of it and email it back, or you can submit it at a public hearing or a workshop such as tonight. Of course, at any public meeting, you can always provide written or verbal testimony. Next slide. As I mentioned before, the online software isn't ready yet because we don't have the actual full redistricting file, but when it is ready, it is strongly recommended that you use the online mapping software to create and submit maps, but in addition to that, there will also be an Excel file that will be used as reference information or can also be used to submit a plan. The Excel file will have an instruction sheet, the same requested author information that will be in the online mapping software, a table where folks can assign a district ID to each of the partial census tracts, and a spreadsheet that will automatically calculate the district totals, percent shares of the population, and the percentage spread. A reference map will also be included. And speaking of maps, as I mentioned before, the online software, again, it's not ready yet because we don't have the data, but until then you can still provide comments and you can also start thinking about what you want those maps to look like and any districts that you might want to create. Within the redistricting kit and already posted online, at the link at the bottom of the slide, there are 3 PDF reference maps that can be used. These have the same census tract IDs that will be included in the data, and these can also be used in tandem with the Excel file. This first map is a black and white map of all of the census tracts in the county. There's 614 in the county. We actually removed the one that's all ocean because nobody's going to be assigned to be living in the population there. So there's only 613 shown here. And this is an 11 by 17 PDF map. We know that it looks kind of crazy because it's on its side, but we wanted to max out the size of the county on the piece of paper, and we wanted to make sure that we didn't have to chop it up. So again, this is an electronic file that you can use online. You can zoom in and you can read all the cities, the CDPs, and the census tract names and IDs. Next slide. This second map is in color and has the 34 cities in the county, plus the 11 census designated places, or CDPs. We have color handouts of this map out front, so if you want to take a copy of those lucky here today. CDPs happen to be portions of unincorporated county that have known or definite boundaries or identifiers. In Orange County, we have 5 newly designated census-designated places in the eastern part of the county. These are Silverado, Williams Canyon, Majeska, Trabuco Canyon, and Rancho Mission Viejo. And we also have 6 that have been carried over from the last census, and these are Coto de Caza, Las Flores, Ladera Ranch, North Tustin, Rossmore, and Midway City. It's not a city even though it's in the name. We keep telling folks that. And next slide. And this map, the third map, is basically the same as the second map, but it also has the 2011 supervisorial districts in case people want to use those as a reference. So Molly will now wrap up our portion, and then she'll give instructions for what we're going to do next in public comments. Thank you, Deborah. And so obviously we have comments for tonight, which we're going to focus on, but also just kind of going throughout the process. So I'll talk about the present time, which is folks that can call in, but this is for public involvement in total throughout the entire redistricting process. So obviously tonight you're participating in the public workshop and meeting. And again, thank you all for being here today and providing comment. We obviously want to hear from you about the communities of interest and what that means for you. What's important to you, the school district boundaries may be important to you, or certain communities or neighborhoods. We need to hear from you to determine what's best, and we will be taking notes and listening to you on this. Obviously, for those inclined to create their own map or actually provide feedback on maps, we would welcome that as well. So we're very excited. We're getting a little further along. We got the data from the census and it's up to the state. So we're well on our way to hopefully getting closer to have you guys draw the maps and have the data put in there. So we appreciate your patience on that. If you haven't already been on our website, our redistricting website, please go there. We do have a place that you can sign up and receive our updates, and we do have a list, an email list that we blast out to on occasions, as we've done throughout this entire community interest events, our events that we've been doing. You can also email us at our redistricting website, redistricting email address at redistricting@ocgov.com. You can email us at any time with questions that you might have. We also, as Deborah mentioned, have a form that you can fill out. It's in all of our threshold languages as well, and it automatically you can fill it in and just send us information. And again, if you even have questions that you'd like to leave a voicemail message on our phone line at 714-834-6000, you can go ahead and do it. And I've had people contact me all the ways and above, and we do respond. So please do stay engaged with us if you have questions. And as I mentioned, we have our website and our phone number and our email address. And with that, I want to go ahead and open it up for public comments tonight. So we're going to toggle back and forth between those on the phone, and I'm going to check our AT&T operator so that's on the phone tonight to start with our people on the phone should they have questions. Again, that number is 844-291-4185, access code 554-1122. Again, speakers are allotted 3 minutes, 6 minutes if you need help with interpretation. Again, tonight we have Spanish and Korean interpreters here that are available to assist with translation. We are not monitoring Facebook at the present time, but obviously we will look at the comments later. So we ask that people provide their comments in writing after the fact, should they have any questions or comments. And so with that, I'd like to open it up to the AT&T operator to see if we have anybody on there. I'll leave the map up so you guys can take a look at that in the audience to maybe hopefully jog up some ideas of interest. AT&T operator, you there?
Yes, I am, and we do have a question.
Please go ahead,
The line
operator.
of Leslie Velasco. Please go ahead.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Leslie Velasco. I'm the Audience for Justice. Our organization serves low-income,
Leslie?
undocumented workers, young people, and survivors of domestic violence through our many programs such as civic engagement, youth organizing, and direct legal services. In addition, we're also a member of the PRA, the People's Redistricting Alliance, a coalition of 15 community-based organizations established to promote a greater community voice in statewide and local redistricting processes in Orange County. The communities of interest we serve in the city of Irvine and Costa Mesa primarily consist of Asian American, Latinx, Pacific Islander, undocumented, and immigrant communities, LGBTQ+ folks, and low-income communities of color. And many of these communities face similar issues due to lack of resources provided, such as lack of affordable housing, due to gentrification, and even lack of resources and support when cities were shut down due to stay-at-home orders back in March last year. Yet, constantly, these communities, we are seeing more and more young folks from the large student populations within these communities of UCI, IBC, OCC, and other local community colleges being actively involved in their city's civic life. These young and working class residents living in Costa Mesa, Staten, La Palma, and surrounding cities like Buena Park want nothing more than to have their fair share of resources so their communities can thrive. And many of the students we work with want to see ethnic studies implemented in K-12 schools. They want to see community gardens, affordable housing, accessible mental health resources, and again, the needs of our underserved communities, specifically communities of color, low-income communities, immigrant communities of color. They do want to get involved, but there are constant obstacles such as language barriers, accessibility, time restraints that even further distance folks from being able to use their voice. Instead, the focus tends to shift on tourism and businesses such as the vacation spots in Newport and Huntington Beach and South Coast Plaza, rather than prioritizing marginalized folks who are the pillar of our community. But now more than ever, it's time for this to change, especially with redistricting. It's crucial that our communities are kept together because they share similar struggles and experiences, and by staying together, they have a stronger voice to ensure that policymakers will address the needs. Thank you so much.
Thank you for your comments. We appreciate it. Now I'd like to go to the floor. If there's anybody here in the audience that would like to provide a comment at this time, it's again 3 minutes for each of the speakers, or 6 minutes if you require interpretation. And you could go ahead to the podium that's directly in front of you.
Can you hear me okay? Okay.
We can hear you.
Thanks. Good evening, Supervisor Foley and redistricting staff. My name is Daniel Chinose, last name spelled I-C-H-I-N-O-S-E. I'm Research Director at the Orange County Civic Engagement Table, or OCIT, which is a nonpartisan alliance based in Garden Grove dedicated to engaging community residents year-round to build an Orange County that serves everyone equitably and with justice. I think everyone knows Orange County is changing. During the 1990 census, our county's population was only 36% people of color. 30 years later, the 2019 American Community Survey data from the Bureau now show people of color make up over 60% of county residents. So despite facing real challenges in their day-to-day lives, including a lack of access to healthcare, affordable housing, and other critical resources, our communities are often ignored by policymakers. We know that how these legislative districts get drawn shapes the amount of attention our communities receive from legislators, really at all levels of government. In January of this year, OCIT helped establish the People's Redistricting Alliance, which, as you heard from one of our members over the phone, is a coalition of over 15 community-based organizations and residents whose goal is to get low-income communities of color and working families involved in both statewide and local redistricting processes. And we're doing that by engaging in a number of activities, obviously educating folks about the redistricting process, creating a space through which folks identify communities of interest that are important to them, mobilizing folks to attend hearings such as this, and obviously working closely with folks to both create congressional, state, and local legislative redistricting proposals that center those most in need. So as these workshops come to a close, I know this is the last one for folks, and you begin to consider how lines should be drawn, we ask that you take a few important things into account. First, consider communities of interest that include the most vulnerable in our county. These are low-income communities, those that lack access to housing, affordable housing, and health insurance, and others facing serious challenges. These folks are really those who are most reliant on county services and have the most to lose if ignored by policymakers. Okay. Second, comply with the Federal Voting Rights Act. We believe that a Federal Voting Rights Act requirement exists in Orange County for the Latinx community specifically in and around Santa Ana, and we'll be working with our partners to help identify the best way to draw it. Finally, we ask you to recognize that race can and should be used as one of many factors in the drawing of lines. Race is an allowable consideration in redistricting, both to ensure Federal Voting Rights Act compliance and if it is used in concert with other communities of interest to draw lines. So thanks so much for organizing these and other opportunities for communities to have a real say in redistricting. We really appreciate all your hard work to make this a fair and transparent process and look forward to working with you moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Dan, for your comments. We appreciate it. I'm going to go to the AT&T operator. AT&T operator, are you there?
Yes, and if you would like to ask a question via the phone, you may press 1 and then 0 at this time. We have a question from the line of Neil Pavia. Please go ahead, your line is open.
Yes, hello.
Hello, please go ahead, caller.
Awesome. Hi, everyone. My name is Neil Pavia. I am a resident of Hampton and also here with the People's Redistricting Alliance with the Orange County Voter Information Project. We are a local nonpartisan that's dedicated to increasing voter engagement and voter turnout year after year for every election. And this time around, we're here advocating and most of all, wanted to thank you for having this forum. Given that it's important, redistricting is going to take a big, going to create a big impact for us in the next 10 years here in Orange County. So we thank you for the engagement that you're trying to provide. But we also want to ask that you continue doing this throughout the redistricting process. Right now, we don't have many folks that are engaged, likely because redistricting is something that comes around once in a decade. So I think there needs to be an ongoing effort to reach out to communities that need to turn out so that they can provide their valuable input into a big process that's going to impact them for the next 10 years and their families. But above all, thank you so much for having this forum, and we look forward to continue working with you to make sure that folks are represented throughout this process. Thank you.
Thank you for calling in for your comments as well. Now I'd like to go to the floor with anybody with a comment. You may go step to the podium and you'll have 3 minutes to speak or 6 minutes with an interpreter.
Yahweh. My name is Kalani Silk. I am a Marshallese and Kiribati origin and have been a resident of Orange County for 36 years, of which 12 were spent in Costa Mesa. I am here on behalf of the Marshallese community. Though we are a small community in number, I am here to ensure that our voice is heard and present. To that end, we are involved in the statewide and local redistricting as a member of the People's Redistricting Alliance. I represent a vibrant and resilient faith-based community where the traditional customs of our ancestors can still be seen and practiced to this day in each of our community homes. Our current population is roughly 5,000 peppered throughout Orange County, with the majority in Costa Mesa. As one of the oldest Marshallese communities here on the continent, we play a vital role in preserving the Marshallese heritage and addressing the unique needs of the Marshallese diaspora. For many years, the community here in Costa Mesa has been the link between the U.S. and the Marshall Islands in the Pacific and has been instrumental in combating healthcare and immigration issues that continue to plague the immigrants from the Republic of the Marshall Islands. Our serving areas include Fountain Valley, Newport Beach, Huntington Beach, Garden Grove, Anaheim, Santa Ana, with the heart of the community and majority members residing in Costa Mesa. Costa Mesa is similar to Irvine. Many live in multi-generational households of 2 to 3 generations. 50% speak other than English in the household. At least 85% are high school graduates, and the percentage of those 65 years and older is similar at 10.5%. Being from a compact-free association nation, we are not eligible for programs such as Supplemental Nutritional Assistance Program, SNAP, Temporary Assistance for Needy Families, Supplemental Security Income, and COVID-19 Funeral Assistance Grants. Native Hawaiian Pacific Islander data has yet to be desegregated for many service-providing agencies, so we are not lumped into the Asian Pacific category, where specific needs specifically for Marshallese communities are overshadowed by the larger population. We ask for continual support for the Compact Impact Fairness Acts as we push forward through the pandemic. Our roots lie here in Costa Mesa. It is here that many of our social events, church gatherings, outreach work exist. It is in Costa Mesa that 4 to 5 generations of Marshallese flourish, and it's here that we hope to build capacity to better assist ourselves. Como tada. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. We appreciate it.
Am I allowed to comment?
You sure can.
Okay, I have to comment because people don't know that when the Marshallese came, they came to Costa Mesa first. And when I was mayor of Costa Mesa, I had the fortunate opportunity to have a visit from a Estancia High School student who went on to become a legislator in the Marshallese. And he came to Costa Mesa so that we could partner. So thank you for sharing all of those comments today.
And is there anybody on the phone at the present time? AT&T operator?
We have no comments at this time.
I'm going to go ahead and repeat the number just for those watching on Facebook in case they'd like to call in. That number is 844-291-4185, access code 5541122. Again, 844-291-4185, access code 5541122. Is there anybody else that would like to speak in the audience at the present time?
Hello, everyone. My name is Cynthia Valencia. I grew up in Orange County. I grew up in Cypress and in Garden Grove. I now am a resident of Huntington Beach. I am a part of a marginalized community. I'm an immigrant. I come from a mixed status immigrant family and am part of the Latinx community. I am also a senior policy advocate and organizer for the ACLU of Southern California. And I am here today to uplift again the communities that continue to be disenfranchised and their vote is being diluted with our current county configuration. I have experienced this personally, and my communities have experienced personally how county officials for at least my lifetime have not really taken care of our communities or have had similar experiences to my community. So I want to uplift that this time when we are doing this new configuration for the Board of Supervisor districts, that it will not be sufficient to just slightly modify the lines that were drawn in 2011. That there needs to be a meaningful difference in taking into communities of interest, especially those who continue to be largely marginalized when it comes to representation. And as a reminder of what happened in 2011, there was a successful attempt by the Republican to ensure full Republican control for the Board of Supervisors. At the time, it was widely reported that every single supervisor at the time met with Republican leadership, specifically the Orange County Republican chairman, and the local Republican Party championed this as a victory for the way that they drew the lines. Specifically, this came at a huge cost to the Latinx community in Orange County. We have already seen from the data that has been dropped that there is a large population of the Latinx community that really needs to be represented in Orange County. And the testimony that has been heard at many of these hearings show that there are communities of interest in Orange County that are made up of large concentrations of Latinx voters. And these communities share interests, concerns in common. They tend to support the same candidates and policies and have been very negatively impacted by the current configuration of the district because they have been unable to elect candidates of choice. If you look at the candidates of choice in the cities of Santa Ana, of Orange, and in Anaheim. So as was mentioned in this presentation, we have two laws that should be protecting these two communities and that should be taken into account: the Fair Maps Act passed in 2018 and the Voting Rights Act that mandates the creation of minority-majority districts for precisely these situations. So just want to reiterate that the board must not attempt to meet its voting rights obligations by placing most Latinx voters in just one majority Latinx district. And we appreciate that that was in the presentation, but hope that it translates into the draft maps that are drawn. So just want to reiterate that and speak out for those groups. But I do have one question for the panel, and it's a clarification about the timeline. So as we have seen before, it seems like there's only 2 weeks for the board, for the public to review and respond to the board's initial draft map. And it says that because there needs to be from November 17th to December 1st, staff to prepare legal descriptions for the ordinance. Other jurisdictions actually draft the ordinance beforehand and then attach the map, the final map that they vote on. So I'm not quite sure why those 2 weeks are needed for staff to draft that when they could be drafting it right now. So I would love to get an answer from the panel if you know why we can't have more time than those 2 weeks.
Mark, would you like to answer that?
The reason why is that the map, the actual ordinance describes it by legal description. So our current ordinance, for example, is about 65 pages long. Mm-hmm. So you take the map and you translate it into metes and bounds. So the board approves the map, but the actual ordinance goes on to 65 pages, and again, I can't speak Mappies, but that's the time that you have to have set aside time so you could formally draft the ordinance that reflects the map that is approved by the Board of Supervisors.
Okay, well, we'll encourage staff to look at how other jurisdictions give more time for public input after the first initial maps are given and do not take quite as long to draft the actual ordinance. Thank you.
Thank you. Can I ask a question that maybe we can follow up on?
Yes, please, Supervisor.
So as it relates to that question, is there, I understand the meets and bounds and the technical map geographical locations that have to be included in the ordinance, but is there other language that's included in the ordinance that doesn't relate to that, that might be able to be shared sooner?
That is something that you could explore. In fact, when our redistricting academy, we talked about, the main thing is that you want to have a map that the register of voters can translate into actual voting districts. One other option is to draw the maps by listing out census tracts and census blocks. I understand that that might help save some time, but I will have to, I wouldn't know exactly how much time that would save, but I do understand that that might be a faster way. Some jurisdictions do lay out the ordinance based by simply listing out, here's District 1, and here's a whole bunch of census tracts and a whole bunch of census blocks, and that might actually help save some time. I can't say how much time it would save.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes.
So we'll look into that.
This is over my pay grade with some of that stuff, so I appreciate Mark being here to answer those questions. Are there any other comments on the phone at the present time?
We have no comments in queue.
All right. Any comments from the floor? Anybody else would like to provide a comment at this time?
Can I ask a question?
Sure. Yeah, we can go to the podium, Dan.
And this is kind of a technical question with respect to the submission of maps. My understanding from the presentation is that it seems like the public participation kits revolve around tract assignment files that the public would submit to the county. Does that mean that the county is actually drawing with the census tract geography as the foundation, or is it drawing based on the census block foundation, in which case the public would actually submit block equivalency files to the county?
So there's different ways that can be submitted. The online software uses the census block level, which is the smallest area of geography. There's 26,734 in the county, to create maps that folks can use separately.
Okay.
That's why we have the census tract reference maps in an Excel file. So if somebody doesn't want to use the online software for whatever reason, there are different ways to create those building blocks. But the software does have the census block, which is the smallest available.
Okay, so we can submit those as part of
Absolutely,
the... Okay,
yes.
great. Thank you very much.
And just follow up that, if you do have GIS software, you can submit the block file to us. It doesn't have to be through the software.
Great, okay, perfect, thank you.
In the public participation plan that also was submitted online at one of our board meetings, we have the contact information for Deborah as well, so the general public can actually ask questions to Deborah to work with her during that process of map creation as well. So this expertise is on retainer for the county and for people as well. All right. I think it's important for folks to know. And if you ever, if there's a question that people have, and they can obviously contact us via phone, as well as email, or within the public comment form, and we'll get back to you in regard to that. It's kind of what I have on here as well for the file. Any other comments, public comments in regard to the 2nd District, maybe what you think about different communities of interest and such that we maybe need to take into consideration for tonight? Feel free to come to the podium.
My name is Austin Edsel. I'm a resident of Huntington Beach. And I guess I have a question. Would cities make up a community of interest, like a group of cities?
Absolutely.
Okay. So as a resident of Huntington Beach, I would consider maybe our beach communities a community of interest. We do deal with kind of special problems that maybe some areas of the district don't. Coastal erosion, rising tides that threaten housing. We know that we would want supervisor and our district to be able to work with our partners in the California and the federal level to be able to kind of fund projects that would protect these communities. And there's also, they're kind of an economic community in and of themselves because they have their own tourism that happens every summer and different public safety issues that come up with that. So I would say that that is a pretty significant community of interest. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. We appreciate it. I'm going to check the phone line one more time. AT&T operator, is there anybody on the phone at the present time?
We have no comments in queue.
And again, if anybody has a question that was watching us on Facebook, it's 844-291-4185, access code 5541122. Again, 844-291-4185, access code 5541122. And with that, I'd like to turn it over back to the folks in the audience. If there's any other further comments at the present time, you have 3 minutes to speak or 6 minutes with a Spanish or Korean translator. All right, seeing none. And one more time, AT&T operator, is there anybody on the phone?
We have no comments in queue.
All right, I think then this concludes our 5th and final public workshop. Again, thank you all for joining us. Some of you have joined us for all of them or a majority of them. So again, thank you all for being here. We greatly appreciate the input that has been provided tonight. Again, do continue to follow us on our redistricting website at ocgov.com/redistricting. And we look forward to interacting with you throughout this entire process. Thank you all and have a great night.